in the room.
Yeah.
I will need this though. So I wrote down some thoughts, no pun intended, and we're going to have a discussion. And my first question, well, I'm finding so many people that have closed their hearts. And my first question for you is, who do you know that has closed their heart? You don't really need to respond, but I'd like you to think through the people you know, and well, I'll tell you a little bit more about that, but you probably know about that. My next question is, what causes us to close our hearts? And this one, I'm looking for responses.
Fear of pain, shame,
Fear of change, and actual heartbreak.
Betrayal.
Trauma. Trauma is the word I was looking for, and all your answers are correct. And they're all, yeah, they're kind of all trauma. So what is the definition of trauma? Wow.
That's pretty good.
Did you read the book or did you write it? I knew that. And I was expecting good answers from you. So I used to just think of trauma as physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, witnessing violence or anything extreme. And I used to think I'd never experienced trauma. Like, oh, that's what other people experience. I've never experienced trauma. And we're all familiar with that. Well, we're not all familiar with that, but we all know about that. Then I started noticing more common and more subtle ways we experience trauma. And I liked Dorothy's answer. It's in my notes. When a relationship we thought would last forever ends, anytime someone betrays our trust, when our parents separate or divorce, when things turn out very differently from what we expected, or our perception of what we thought would happen doesn't happen. What are some other ways that might be considered trauma?
Sometimes it's backwards in what you think when parents stay together and should not have. And their children are traumatized from that union more than were they to have separated.
I guess I did experience that trauma.
Assault,
Yes.
or any major injury,
Okay.
being in an accident.
James? Not getting emotionally what?
Not getting emotional as a child.
Yes. Anybody got? What was yours?
I said anything that puts you in the hospital.
Yes. That's a good point.
Or someone you know.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Did you say personal failure?
Yes.
That's a good one.
Personal failure. Yeah.
Who really did?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Loss of loved ones.
Yes. Especially repeatedly in a short period of time. But it doesn't take more than one. It depends on how close you are to them. What are some more subtle ways that we wouldn't necessarily classify as trauma? Okay?
Having high expectations, not being met.
Yeah. Yeah. Clint?
I'm going to say teasing and pushing buttons.
That game when we were kids that we never knew what everything was going to pop out at us. Yeah. That's still,
Yep, I still carry that.
I'm the youngest of 8, and I hated getting tickled. Because when you're getting tickled, it's an out of control experience.
Yeah.
And I did figure out the trick. Would you like to know the trick?
Yeah.
The way you win a tickle fight is you play no defense, you play all offense.
Get him. Get him.
Anyway, that's not the point of my presentation. But thank you. So,
Ray's gonna tickle everyone.
Yeah, now you can win. So trauma is part of our lives, and some are affected more than others. When you've been hurt enough, it's a natural reaction to close your heart, to reduce the risk, to numb the pain. Who do you know that has a closed heart? What are the negative results of a closed heart?
Relationships.
It affects all our relationships, doesn't it? What else?
Self-confidence, self-esteem.
Yes. Pam?
Feeling numb, so you're not feeling anything.
Yeah, I think the popular way to say that these days is you're not emotionally available. And we all know people like that. Andrea?
Unconsciously putting those around you because you haven't
Yeah. Yes. Clint?
I think that when you shut down, it seeps into other parts of your life too. You're going to lose friends. Your house is going to become shambles. Your bathroom will be dirty. Your clothes will be dirty. You'll be smelly. That'll make it even worse. And then your finances will go bad too. It just seeps to other parts of your life.
In speech training, this is called taking us into the pit. Thank you for taking us into the pit.
No, but even to the body though, like, and or organs are shutting down or not functioning correctly. Lack of sleep, lack of appetite, lack of everything.
Pam?
Disease creates
Dis-ease
disease.
creates disease. That's true. So all of this can be a result of having a closed heart. Let's see if you covered the ones I wrote down. It affects our relationships. We're not emotionally available. We have a hard time trusting people. We don't trust ourselves. We often feel anxious, which sometimes leads to depression or worse. We have a hard time loving others, and it's even harder to love ourselves. Are you seeing why I'm always talking about loving yourself? It's one way to open the heart. It's a beautiful thing to watch someone open their heart, especially if it's been closed for a long time. Who do you know that has a closed heart? That'd be a great referral for me. Are there any questions? Thanks for participating so great in my questions. I'm Curtis, the Thought Coach. I help people open their hearts. Ron.
You still got 3 minutes.
Oh, I thought you were saying I have a question.
I can't hold up those other 3 fingers, so I will.
Sherry.
One of the things that I've said for a long time, and Curtis has heard me say this a ton.
And I can tell you what she's about to say.
Yeah, people get very nervous about, yeah, but what is this going to cost me? And I'm very busy and I have a lot going on. And I have said for years, if you cannot afford a coach, it is time for you to get one. Right? So I think it's really valuable to kind of think, is this something I need in my life? Is it something that will help me even if I can't afford it? Right? Is that a phrase that I need to remove from my vocabulary? Because is it leading me, and do I need to look at a good coach to help me get to a level I'm not, at which I'm not yet, but I want to be?
And I used to have a pretty strict policy that you pay me for all the sessions up front. And lately, I've become a lot more flexible on that. And I found some other payment plans that work for people. And so when I'm talking to people about their referrals that they want to refer to me, I say, don't ask yourself if they can afford it. If they're willing to get on a 60-minute call with me, we can work that out. I'll handle the whether or not they can afford it. Because I've seen people, when they see the value and they put a priority on it, they can afford it when they even thought they couldn't. I have a lot of people meet with me for the first time thinking, oh, I'm not going to sign up, I can't afford it. But we find a win-win. And that's all it takes is a win-win. James.
I know this is probably, answer to this is probably a lot longer than hopefully you can just kind of As far as getting over past trauma, do you recommend actually working through that past trauma or trying to find a way to work around it?
Oh, that's a great question. So I'll give you a very indirect answer. A lot of times when I'm in a session with someone and they begin to cry, they apologize for getting emotional. And I said, no, don't apologize for getting emotional. This is coaching. Crying is a great tool. It's the way you work through your emotion. And working through emotion is sometimes how I describe what I do. I help people process emotion. And so I would definitely recommend working through it. And I don't know if I'm listening to a book for the second time called The Body Keeps the Score, which is all about trauma. And if you haven't read that and you want to learn more about trauma, it's a great read. And there's a chapter in there that recommends several ways to deal with trauma. And the one thing that I remember that he found really helps is yoga. A lot of times when people have experienced trauma, they kind of leave their body, at least partially. And he says yoga really helps you connect with yourself and be in your body. And thank you for your questions.